Welcome to Fireside Giants. My name is Alex with my co-host here, Anthony Rivardo. And we got good news heading into this weekend's preseason game against the Patriots. Doesn't really have an impact on this weekend, but according to Tom Rock of Newsday, guess what? Kadarius Toney is expected to be available for the Week 1 contest against the Denver Broncos. And we've been saying this. We've been saying, people are getting a little bit too crazy about Kadarius Toney missing time. He's dealing with COVID, coming back, and really good news to hear that they're expecting him to be available for this Week 1 contest against Denver. Having him on the field, I know it's not the same because he hasn't gotten those live reps now in the last couple of weeks, but he's been learning in the classroom. They do a lot of work behind the scenes that we do not know about, and Kadarius Toney will be ready. They have a full week of practice this next week to really get him into shape and get him into game form, and hopefully he can make an impact against Denver with that, low center of gravity, just big home run making ability. Anthony, how excited are you to see Kadarius Toney making this comeback and hopefully making his first appearance in Week 1?
I mean, I'm thrilled, of course. I want to see Kadarius Toney on the field. I was hoping we would get some, a little bit of preseason action from Kadarius. We aren't going to get any of that, but that's totally okay. According to Dan Duggan, he did have the COVID setback, and then there was a minor injury on an unspecified body part. So he's only had one full participated practice so far, according to Duggan. So dude is way far behind, like super, super far behind, but at least he is getting healthy enough to the point where they're saying they expect him to play in Week 1. Of course, that's the main goal. Come out of the preseason training camp, program fully healthy for the regular season. So if Kadarius Toney is healthy for the regular season, it's a victory in my books. And I'm excited to watch him play on Sunday against the Denver Broncos next 2 Sundays from now, I guess. Yeah, it's going to be bye week after the preseason. And of course, during that, you're going to see a lot of roster overturn, of course. You're going to see a lot of cuts as teams get from, I think, 86 all the way down to 53. So a lot of players are going to unfortunately lose their jobs. A lot of them are going to end up on practice squads. And there's going to be a lot of waiver wire moves that are going to be made. Maybe the Giants make some moves. Maybe they make some potential trades for some offensive linemen. I don't know. We'll see. It's going to be an exciting time between now and the start of the regular season.
Yeah, and there's two big things that kind of went down. One of them eye-opening, another one impactful for the NFC East. And let's talk about the NFC East impact. The Eagles trading for Gardner Minshew for just a sixth-round pick, which is pretty crazy to me. Gardner Minshew is not a bad quarterback, and some might say he's a winning quarterback in the NFL. He's more than capable. Honestly, he's better than Jalen Hurts, in my opinion. Jalen Hurts had 50% completion rate last year. I know he's been looking, has a fair share of ups and downs during training camp and preseason, but Gardner Minshew is a proven commodity. And he's not going to win you a Super Bowl. He might not even win you a playoff game, but he can win during the regular season. He can beat bad teams. And I think he's actually a pretty capable quarterback if you give him the weapons necessary. Problem is, Jacksonville just didn't really have that many great weapons. They just gave him a poor offensive line. They gave him poor weapons in the receiving game. He didn't really have good running backs. Leonard Fournette was a bum when he was with Jacksonville. So now you're thinking Gardner Minshew with the Eagles, and at first I was like, okay, you know what? They have two mediocre quarterbacks, and I still believe that. Gardner Minshew, facing off against the Giants 2 times a year, I'm pretty confident our defense will run circles around Gardner Minshew. But at the end of the day, he does have that ability, that X factor at times. It comes out of nowhere every now and then. He's capable of winning games for you, and that does present a potential challenge for the Giants. But at the end of the day, I think it's Jalen Hurts' job to lose. I don't think Gardner Minshew's coming in here and stealing starting jobs away. They do have Joe Flacco as well. I think it's going Jalen Hurts, Flacco, and Minshew for now. Minshew maybe, if Hurts really is sucking, takes over later on in the season. But Anthony, what is your perspective on this Gardner situation? Do you think that he actually has a shot at becoming the starting quarterback?
I mean, he has a shot just because I'm not a Jalen Hurts believer, and I do think that if the season goes poorly for Philadelphia, it's going to go poorly because of Jalen Hurts, and Jalen Hurts is going to have to play really, really poorly, like really bad, and then he gets benched, and then you could possibly talk about maybe Gardner Minshew or Joe Flacco. We'll see which one. Though that is not like the likelihood is Jalen Hurts does play the full season as the starter for the Philadelphia Eagles. So I'm not expecting to see Gardner Minshew suit up for Philadelphia at any point this season. But if he does, I know that this is a conditional trade, so the draft pick would go even higher for Jacksonville as well. But also, if he does, if we ever see Gardner Minshew out there, no, I'm not going to be afraid of Gardner because he is like your quintessential system quarterback. If he's playing in the right system on the right day with the right talent around him, then yes, he will have a good game, and sometimes he can have just some explosively good game. That's just because of the system. He's just your quintessential system quarterback. And so that's never that much of a fearful thing to go up against, especially if you have a good defense. If you have a mediocre defense and you go up against a good system quarterback, yes, they might be able to tear you apart. But when you got a Patrick Graham defense with Jabril Peppers, Xavier McKinney, Leonard Williams, Dexter Lawrence, Blake Martinez, James Bradbury, all of these guys, no, I'm not that worried about any system quarterback. And I really hope that this whole take that I'm giving right here doesn't come back to bite me. I hope I don't get put on, old takes exposed or whatever, freezing cold takes. But that's just how I'm feeling about it. Gardner Minshew, I think that he'll just be a serviceable backup. If there's any injuries, Jalen Hurts is also a mobile quarterback. I do believe he's dealt with some injuries in the past, whether that be in college. But yeah, I think you could maybe see Gardner Minshew go out there, but no, I'm not going to be like shaking in my boots over Gardner Minshew taking the reins as the Philadelphia Eagles quarterback. I mean, he's your system quarterback, dude. He's average.
I agree for the most part. Gardner, he is a guy that kind of tallied the 62.9% completion percentage. He's had 37 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. So for the most part, he's not a quarterback that, should be passed over by any means. It's just simply a Trevor Lawrence being on the team. You just don't need Gardner Minshew. Might as well get some draft capital back for him. He was sacked 60 times in 23 games, which is a 7% sack rate, just an absurd amount of sacks. Whether that's because the offensive line was poor, he holds onto the football for way too long, probably a combination of both. But at the end of the day, you look at Jalen Hurts' stats from last year. Of course, rookie season should take a step forward. Who knows how big that will be? He can't get much worse than what he did last season. 15 games, 4 starts, a 52% completion percentage. I think I could probably do more than that. 6 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He was sacked, he was sacked 13 times, an 8.1% sack rate, so even more than Gardner Minshew. He fumbled 9 times in 4 games that he started. So talk about a player that really was impacted. I think, he's a guy that he must take a big, big step forward. We're talking about like what we hope Daniel Jones does. But I have to say Gardner Minshew brings that swagger with him. I mean, his nickname is the Jockstrap King, which is absolutely hilarious. It's either the mustache or the Jockstrap King. Honestly, his photo on Pro Football Reference kind of looks like a mugshot. It's kind of creeping me out with the mullet and everything. It looks like he just like was transported from the 1980s into present day, which is what I kind of like about him. It kind of pisses me off because I like him as a player and just kind of like an image. But being on the Eagles now, I hate his guts. So hopefully he fails in Philadelphia. Hopefully Jalen Hurts also fails as well. But I think for the most part, I'm not too worried about these two quarterbacks. I think the Giants defense is more than capable of taking full advantage of them. But let's talk about another thing that I think the Giants might do, I guess, for the next couple days. Just start gauging offensive line talent. We saw the Baltimore Ravens just made a trade for an offensive lineman, and I think these roster bubble guys is the perfect opportunity for Big Blue to go and say, okay, we have a ton of late round picks in the upcoming years. We just got a 7th round conditional pick for Ryan Santoso, who was just confirmed to be the starting kicker for Carolina that just released Joey Sly. So Santoso, they're getting that 7th round pick for sure. And I think, when we're talking about offensive linemen, there's going to be a ton of roster bubble guys. You don't want to test your luck on the waiver wire. You want to go get those guys who you know can be a good scheme fit, someone with some upside, someone that might offer some potential, maybe somebody that the Patriots or Browns had that the Giants have had some luck, kind of taking a look at over the past couple of joint practices. But Anthony, what are you thinking about maybe trading for one of those roster bubble guys with upside that might just be on a team that has too much depth at a position? The Giants could use more depth on the offensive line, and spending a late round pick, in my opinion, could easily be worth it.
Yeah, I'm just curious to know like who would that guy be? What player could be on the roster bubble on the offensive line that's, good, right? Like it's hard to find guys like that in that kind of like steal scenario. Like for Carolina, this was kind of a steal. They gave up a 7th round pick for a guy who is probably going to start all 18 games for them this year, right? With Ryan Santoso. So like good trade for them, but how do you find that on the offensive line? That's just way more difficult. I don't think you're finding any starters. So yeah, you're probably going to be talking about conditional 7th round picks that you're giving up for a reserve offensive lineman that you just think is better than the other reserve offensive lineman that you have on the team. I think, a couple names that I did read about, I don't know the names off the top of my head, but I just know that the Cleveland Browns have a couple of backup offensive linemen that some Giants fans noticed during joint practices and said, okay, the
Forbes
Giants
is
should
my
go after
man.
these guys if they get cut. And if they don't get cut, then maybe they should make the trade for them. And that's something that Art Stapleton pointed out today as well. He said that if there is going to be trades made between teams, including the Giants, you're probably looking at the Giants and Browns, the Giants and Patriots, that pipeline right there just from the joint practices. That's likely how the Giants get their moves done, if they get any moves done at all. So I think that's something to keep an eye on. Any Browns backups or Patriots backups that you like and you had your eye on, those are the guys that the Giants are more likely to trade for. But of course, they're going to be diligent. They're going to do their due diligence, look around the league, look around all of the guys that are in danger of being released from their teams, and then see maybe one of these guys should be a trade candidate. And I'm all for it as long as they don't give up, anything too lucrative. I just want to give up, take a flyer on a young guy who can be some quality depth for a late round pick. That's what I'm looking for. I wouldn't mind that at all. And I think that it would be a pretty smart and cost efficient move for the Giants, considering how many draft picks they have in next year's draft.
I agree. I think there's a couple of good players that they should be keeping an eye on. And although I will say last week, the offensive line, at least the depth, looked a lot better. They pretty much played the entire game. Kenny Wiggins took a big step forward. I know Jake Burton got beat a couple times, but, he's also undrafted free agent. I don't even know if he's going to make this team. I mean, he tried to fight Dexter Lawrence the other day, so probably good indication he's mad about something. You just don't pick on a guy that size. It's a death wish at the end of the day. But this offensive line could use some support. This weekend, we're going to get a good look at the starters for the most part. That first half, the Giants are going to play their starters. We're going to see the offensive line really get an opportunity to showcase what they're made of. We need to see them protect Daniel Jones. Everything, this whole season boils down to the offensive line, because we know that Daniel Jones is a good quarterback when he has time in the pocket. We know that. But if the offensive line is continuously letting up pressure, there's no way he's going to have that time. There's no way he's going to be successful. And even though we have all of these weapons, it doesn't matter if you don't have the time to throw the ball, which is a little bit of a concern, in my opinion, that we spent so much money at wide receiver and just, completely avoided spending money or really significant money on the offensive line. I know we want to trust these youngsters, but at the end of the day, Kevin Zeitler was our best guy and we sucked last year. And it doesn't breed a lot of optimism, but at the end of the day, the team does have the draft capital to bring in another offensive lineman mid-season if need be. Trade for a guy maybe that's on the bubble, maybe someone that's not happy with their situation. Who knows? There's always guys at the deadline that are available. The Giants have the draft capital to do so, but they really want these youngsters to pan out, because if they do, think about the monetary flexibility it offers them. You have two bookend right tackles, or rather left and right tackles, who you don't have to pay significant dollars to because they're on the rookie contracts. You have two guards, Will Hernandez, who's going into his final year, and then you have Shane Lemieux, who's in his second year as a really, really cheap rookie. Nick Gates, who signed a contract extension for dirt cheap. If these guys pan out, this team is looking really good for the future in terms of financial flexibility. So that's something to keep your mind wrapped around, because a lot of people are pessimistic when it comes to the trenches. There's a lot of factors that are playing into the positivity. Andrew Thomas has had an up and down, that some might say, training camp, but also some might say he's had a tremendously improved training camp compared to last year's season, because he didn't even have a preseason last year. So, that's a big point to mention as well, Anthony. But let's talk about a couple of players that are going to be, fighting for their jobs this weekend on Sunday, or really some guys we want to just keep our eyes on. I think that there's a couple of big names that we really want to watch. Matt Parrott and pretty much the entire offensive line is a position that we really want to see how they respond. After this joint practices with New England, they got kind of beat up a little bit. Especially Matt Parrott was giving up a couple of pressures. Anthony, is he one of those guys that needs to show improvement this weekend? Because what happens if he doesn't? What happens if Matt Parrott doesn't look that good and they have to make a decision? Is Nate Solder a guy that we want to give that starting right tackle spot to, or are we just giving it to Matt Parrott no matter what?
I mean, I'm taking a close look in this game at the offensive line as a whole. I'm really going to be evaluating these guys because we saw them play 11 passing snaps in the Jets game. So, I think 16 total snaps or something like that. Something really small sample size for these guys. And I don't feel too confident after evaluating such a small sample size going into the regular season that the improvements that we saw in that small sample size are the truth, right? I want to see a little bit of a larger sample size just to feel a little more comfortable going into the regular season. So I'm taking a look at the whole offensive line on Sunday and seeing how all five of the starters play. I don't think Shane Lemieux will be playing. I highly doubt that. I think they're still just working him back slowly but surely. I think he's been practicing a lot, though, so he should be good for the start of the regular season. But yeah, Matt Parrott is the number one offensive lineman that I am keying in on. Of course, when you talk about guys like Andrew Thomas and Will Hernandez, I'm keying in on them to see how have they improved. They're a little more proven because they've got full seasons under their belt. Andrew Thomas started all last year. Will Hernandez has been in the league for 3 years now. But when you talk about Matt Parrott, we've only ever seen him have 150 snaps in the regular season. So again, you're talking about small sample sizes. They have to grow from that. You have to build on such small sample sizes and prove yourself as a player. And right now, Matt Parrott, unproven commodity. He has not proven himself as a player. Yes, I know. I am the number one Matt Parrott fan. I'm like the huge Matt Parrott advocate. I've been a huge fan of his since before he was even on the New York Giants. And I want to see him succeed and be the starting right tackle. But no, I don't want the Giants to just hand him the starting right tackle job because he's a young guy who plays right tackle. Yes, he's a young guy who plays right tackle, and I think that he can do it at a very high level, but he needs to prove it. He has to show me that. I can't just keep telling you all that I think he can do it. He's going to have to show it to all of us. And on Sunday, again, we're talking about feeling comfortable with the offensive line going into the regular season. If we don't feel comfortable, we might have to make some changes within the time that preseason game ends and the start of the regular season begins. So I want to feel comfortable, and in order for me to feel that way, I need to see Matt Parrott have a good outing on Sunday. Like, he has to play better than he has earlier in this preseason throughout the training camp, because he's had some good days in training camp and he's had some bad days. It hasn't been consistently good. And a lot of the mistakes that we saw from last year are showing up again this year. So I thought that a lot of that would have been ironed out by now. I know that he's dealing with the back injury. We mentioned that yesterday on the podcast. I think that that's still probably affecting him. I doubt he's at 100%. It's a back injury. Those don't really ever get back to 100%. But for Matt Parrott, again, not handing out starting jobs. Nate Solder's right behind them, a proven commodity. We don't really have any of those on the offensive line. The one that we do is Nate Solder, and he's our backup tackle who can play either side of the line. If Matt Parrott plays like extremely poorly on Sunday, I might have to say that I want Nate Solder to start the regular season. If Matt
Because it's
Parrott
about
plays
Daniel
extremely
Jones.
well, though, yeah, it is about Daniel Jones, and that's of course how it is. But it's not only about Daniel Jones. The offensive line does everything for your offense. It helps the quarterback, it helps the receivers, buys them time to get open. It helps the Saquon Barkley and the running backs. Can they find the rushing lanes to create yardage and actually make plays on the ground? Because that was, again, a struggle last year. Run blocking at times was a real problem. Matt Parrott, this is the game where you just have to kind of just show up. I know it's preseason. He's not even going up against the best of the best competition in this game, but still, he needs to show up. He needs to have a good outing for me to feel comfortable with him going into the regular season, and for Daniel Jones to feel comfortable with him protecting his right side going into the regular season. It's a very important game for Matt Parrott as he tries to solidify the starting job. And if he doesn't have a good game, then yes, I think a lot of fans are going to be calling for Nate Solder to take over as the starter.
Yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day, Nate Solder, while he has missed a season of play, hasn't played right tackle since like 2011. It's easier to play right tackle than left tackle in the NFL, and that's simply if it's the blind side. Now, making that transition for Nate Solder could be a little bit difficult, but if Matt Pert is struggling and Nate Solder's had a good camp, I feel as though we should stick with a more experienced option, because I feel like Nate Solder will adapt quicker to the actual play. He'll get into more of a groove than Matt Pert will, just because of the lack of experience, lack of fundamentals, lack of just seeing some of the best pass rushers in the NFL. I mean, you have to remember, Nate Solder did win a Super Bowl with the Patriots. Like, he was known as a pretty good offensive lineman. Anthony, would you feel confident with him at right tackle at the very least?
I think I would feel confident that we're getting at least a serviceable offensive lineman. You know what I'm saying? It's serviceable. But everything that I've heard so far, training camp, all the beat writers, they've kind of been ranting and raving about Nate Solder. They've been saying that he's playing really, really well. Like, it doesn't look like he missed a full year of football. It looks like he just came back and is ready to play. And I think that's a really good sign for him, of course. I think, we're talking about all these trades. Maybe Nate Solder could potentially be a guy that they could move for an asset, but I don't think that would be smart because, of course, he is a proven commodity. I do feel like we know what we're getting with him, and I want something proven on this offensive line, even if it is a backup tackle in Nate Solder. So, yeah, I do feel confident in him that he can give us serviceable to average offensive line play, and sometimes that's really all you need. Sometimes all you need is average, and if Matt Parrott is somehow playing way below average, then yeah, I want my average Nate Solder to go out there and play some average football.
Just average is enough at this point. That's all we're looking for. But that's what we've been asking for this entire offseason. Average offensive line play would be like the biggest development for the Giants and would actually probably will us to the playoffs. But let's move over to another player here. Actually, I want to talk about two players in the same unit, the wide receiver unit. Back end of that, big position battle right there. I'm not giving David Sills this yet, although I want him to get that roster spot. Dante Pettis has looked awesome the last couple days. He's really starting to show why he should be on this team, but David Sills has been doing it for longer. David Sills has been showing why he should be on this team since the beginning of training camp with his work ethic. I was watching Dante Pettis kind of ride around on a skateboard in LA while David Sills was following Daniel Jones around the country catching footballs from his quarterback. That's what Joe Judge wanted to see. Dante Pettis will get scooped up in a matter of days on the waiver wire, but David Sills, in my opinion, is more of a long-term solution. Dante Pettis is making a little bit more than him, and I think that Sills, having caught so many red zone touchdowns this training camp, he caught one in the last preseason game. He caught one, maybe one or two against the Patriots during joint practices. I'm on Sills gang, Sills Army for sure. I think he's going to win this battle. I think they're going to have him playing a lot more snaps because we don't have Kadarius Toney or Kenny Golladay this weekend against the Patriots. We're going to see David Sills. We're going to see Dante Pettis with that first team. Now, the question is, who is going to look better, Anthony? What are you thinking?
I think you know exactly who I'm rooting for and who I think will be better. I'm huge on David Sills, bro. I'm super high on David Sills. I think that he's an awesome player. Not to say anything disrespectful about Dante Pettis. I just prefer David Sills. Dante Pettis is a good player, and he contributed some awesome snaps at the end of the regular season last year, which I think is going to be in the back of the Giants, decision makers' minds as they make these final cuts. I think they're definitely going to look at last regular season and say, okay, Dante Pettis did compete against starters, and that might give him some sort of a slight edge. But personally, the summer that David Sills has had and the connection that he has with Daniel Jones in particular, and the way that he just worked like tirelessly this offseason to improve and to gain a chemistry with Daniel Jones, all of that combined with a great preseason, all those standout practices, David Sills to me already earned his spot on this roster as long as the Giants are holding enough receivers on the roster to keep him there, right? Because I don't know how many they're going to keep on the roster. Some people are talking about them keeping two fullbacks. Some people are talking about them keeping an extra defensive lineman, an extra offensive lineman, extra tight end. I don't know where this extra receiver comes from, and that's the only problem that I see with David Sills making this roster. I want him to, and I think that he deserves to, but he needs to like solidify that tomorrow night. You know what I'm saying? Like, because there is question marks as to whether or not they're going to keep that extra receiver. He needs to say, okay, I'm so good that I'm giving you no choice but to keep me as that extra receiver on this roster. That's what I'm looking for from David Sills. Or Dante Pettis could make the same argument, but ultimately I do think that David Sills is the guy who wins that battle. I've been so impressed with him, and I also love what he brings to the table as a big body outside receiving threat, more of a red zone guy. Plus, his release package is like really good. He's actually a much better route runner than I ever realized until I started watching him this preseason. So, yeah, I've been endlessly impressed with David Sills, and I do think he's going to have a good performance on Sunday, and I think it's going to solidify his spot on the final 53.
Facts. And I also think that 6'4" frame he has definitely benefits the Giants because if Kenny Golladay is forced to miss any time, they need a taller receiver who can kind of replicate his style, his scheme in the scheme, I guess, just the way that he plays. And I think David Sills is close as you can match up to, I guess, in terms of size and at least just supplement him while he's out. And that's what they're going to hopefully do with him this weekend. They're going to use him as that big possession receiver, throw some balls high for him that they can catch, use him as a red zone threat. And I think that's where he really makes his money. So hopefully David Sills will win this. I think that he will. And his chemistry with Daniel Jones is unmatched for some of these other receivers. He might actually have the most chemistry with Daniel Jones out of any of the receivers, aside from maybe Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton. And those are two guys that have looked awesome this training camp. Apparently, Darius Slayton has looked freaking amazing. And Sterling Shepard, we've seen the videos. He's been cracking ankles. There's no one that can keep up with him right now. So I'm excited to see him get some action on Sunday as well. But let's talk about two more players really quickly, one of them being Xavier McKinney and the other being David Moa, as guys we want to keep our eye on this weekend. Xavier McKinney has the ability to be that X factor in the secondary. You're talking about those three safety packages. You're talking about Jabril Peppers in that money backer role. You're talking about Xavier McKinney and Logan Ryan kind of shifting and moving back and forth as free safeties, strong safeties, and really just doing some unique things. Because Patrick Graham, when you have those guys, you can bait guys into making bad throws. And that's what they did against Mac Jones this week in joint practices. Mac Jones, there's a receiver looked wide open, and Logan Ryan shifted back a little bit, allowed him to create that little bit of space, then he undercut the route and intercepted it. So when you have inexperienced quarterbacks, you're taking on guys, and against Denver, Teddy Bridgewater might be one of those guys you could bait into making a bad throw, even Drew Lock if he was starting. But I think that the Giants have so much talent in that secondary, especially at safety. Xavier McKinney has all the tools to be a tremendous player. He's physical, he's fast, he's gritty, he's aggressive, and he's got a really great eye for the football, and his game speed is far better than his actual speed. So I think he's a player I really, really am excited about, Anthony, and I imagine you're feeling the same way.
You know exactly how I feel about Xavier McKinney and really all the guys in the secondary. Super excited by all of them. But Xavier McKinney is one of my favorite players on the New York Giants right now. I'm a huge fan of his. I loved him coming out of Alabama. Thought he was an absolute steal in the second round of the 2020 NFL draft. And I think you're going to see him play a starting level of snaps this year. And that's really what I want to watch today or tomorrow night when I see Xavier McKinney play. How exactly is he being used and how much is he playing? Because the starters are expected to play the entire first half and then maybe a little bit in the third quarter. How much of that game is Xavier McKinney even playing? Like, how frequently is he on the field? What sub packages is he playing in? Is he exclusive to the dime? Is he in the nickel? Does he play the big nickel? Does he play the slot? Does he play free, strong safety, linebacker at all? Where are they going to put him? Where is he going to play the most? Now, I know that they're probably going to try him out at a few places and not actually plan on playing him in those places during the regular season because they don't want to give too much away anyway. But I want to see how frequently he's on the field because to me, I'm projecting that he plays probably just as much as close enough to Logan Ryan, like a starting level of snaps this season, because the Giants love to play those 3-3-5 odd defenses that have three safeties on the field, those big nickels where the safety is playing the slot. I love seeing that type of defensive packages from the Giants, and I think Patrick Graham really loves to utilize them. He does so frequently. And so I'm projecting that Xavier McKinney will play a starting level of snaps, and I want to get a little preview of that on Sunday. See, does he play like he's a starter? Is he out there just as much as Logan Ryan, just as much as Jabril Peppers? Or maybe I have this wrong and I misinterpreted the final 6 weeks of the season because those final like 3 games when Xavier McKinney was healthy, especially look at the last game against Dallas, that's the defense I expect the Giants to play this year, where Xavier McKinney is playing a starting level of snaps, but so is Logan Ryan, Jabril Peppers, and then even Julian Love is getting plenty of snaps out there as well. And then Darnay Holmes playing the slot is also getting a fair amount of snaps. Defensive back heavy defense for the Giants this year. That's what I'm projecting, and that's why I think you're going to see Xavier McKinney on the field probably at least 85% of snaps this season. So I just want to get a little glimpse of that in this Sunday game.
Yeah, and then you have David Melmo on the defensive front, who's looked awesome as a run stopper, really filling those A gaps and clogging up the interior of the trenches. And I think David Melmo is a guy that's kind of flown under the radar. He had a good game last week, a good first preseason game against the Jets, and he's pushing for a roster spot. The Giants love those interior defenders. They have Austin Johnson, they have Danny Shelton. I think David Melmo is going to make this team, and I think he can offer a little bit more than just a nose tackle. He can kind of play in the 4-eye, he can play in the 3. He can move around a little bit depending on what they're going to do. If they use a bear front, if they use they're using 3 tech and a nose tackle. He can be that guy in the middle. But he's kind of the third string, right? They're gonna go with Danny Shelton. They're gonna go with Austin Johnson more so than David Melmo, but he can do a couple things. And I think he's gonna make this roster if he can put together another good game on Sunday. He'll probably get the majority of snaps in the second half. We're gonna see that interior defense. Leonard Williams, Dexter Lawrence, and my God, those guys have the potential to be so good. Apparently, Azeez Ojulari is looking like a first-round pick, where he was expected to be drafted, ended up at 50th overall, which is a tremendous value grab for the Giants, who also got a third-round pick out of that situation by trading back from 41 to 50. They absolutely killed that entire scenario. And Azeez Ojulari, who's only 20 years old, guy can't even buy a beer yet, is just so much potential left to untap. Hopefully this year of experience will really prove to be a big deal for him and learning some new pass rush moves, getting some strength, learning how to take advantage of some different styles of offensive tackles, whether it be a heavy footer, more of a power blocker, more of an agile offensive lineman. I think this is going to be an opportunity for him to actually gain chemistry with Leonard Williams and Dexter Lawrence, using those stunts the Giants love to do and creating confusion in the trenches. So, Anthony, what are you thinking about David Melmo? I know I went on a little tangent spin off there, but what are you thinking about that entire little sequence?
So my thing with David Moa is who would he be replacing, right? Is BJ Hill. And I'm a huge BJ Hill fan. I think that he's an awesome player, and I think that he's contributed really solid snaps for the Giants in the regular seasons and in the preseason this year and in training camp. Like, I'm a big BJ Hill guy, but here's the thing with David Moa. He's significantly cheaper than BJ Hill. If the Giants cut BJ Hill, they'll save $2 million. That could be your backup left guard. That could be your backup center. That could be your backup right guard. That could be the depth on the offensive line that we need. So ultimately, if the Giants do go with David Moa, they're playing the cost-efficient game, right? They're trying to get the expensive players who are backups out of here and get some inexpensive players to be those backups. And David Moa would be the more inexpensive option of the two. So you can cut BJ Hill, save $2 million, and go invest that elsewhere, somewhere of a position of weakness on this team. Personally, I don't know what they're going to do. I think that BJ Hill probably makes the roster just because he is like a starting level player. If anything, maybe they should look to trade him and not cut him, just because he is a starting level player. He was former, I believe, fifth or third round pick. I think fifth round pick for the Giants, and he had 5.5 sacks in his rookie year, which is an incredible total to accumulate as a rookie in the NFL, especially as an interior defensive lineman. So BJ Hill, I'm a big fan of him. I do want to see him make the roster, but right now I think it's coming down to him versus David Moa, and I see the argument for both sides. Do you want the better player, or do you want the more cost-efficient player, considering that David Moa probably isn't going to play that much this season anyway? Might make more sense. BJ Hill, same thing, probably wouldn't play that much this season anyway, just because Dexter Lawrence, and Leonard Williams being the full-time starters there. And then Danny Shelton and Austin Johnson look like they're going to take the nose tackle position by storm. So not really sure where these guys actually fit onto the field, which is why I think the Giants might make this cost-efficient decision and go ahead and keep David Moa over BJ Hill.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept, actually letting BJ Hill go. Although I do think that they probably will keep him just as that more of a pass rush threat. I think David Moa, they want that more potential. I guess that since losing Dalvin Tomlinson, they want another big interior nose tackle. And I think David Moa offers that value. So we'll see. They could easily replace him with, replace BJ Hill with David Moa. We'll see what happens. Save a little bit of money here and there. We all know that Dave Gettleman loves to go into the season with a couple million in the bank. Saw it last year. A guy got injured. They went out and signed Logan Ryan. He's now here for 3 more years. So it does happen. You do need some cash going into the season, and saving will be essential. And of course, cutting all these players, 27 guys still need to be released. I think they did sign a defensive back, Jordan Peters, who was with the team earlier. So maybe they need 28 guys to be cut now. But 28 guys, that's a lot of money. So they will have some more cap space being opened up, my friends. But I hope you're excited for Sunday's game against the Patriots. We're going to see this first team offense in action. Hopefully we'll get some points on the board. Daniel Jones will show us some good stuff. The offensive line will show us some good stuff. The defense will overwhelm the Patriots first team offense. And we're excited to get some real-time football and see this first team for the first time this season. And then we're headed to the regular season in 2 weeks, my friends. I'm hyped. Let's get it going. I know for a fact you guys are excited, and we are as well. Make sure to subscribe below on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify, and we'll catch you guys on the next New York Giants video.